Right now, though, we're in the process of looking at 13 lessons from 10 kings who are in the bloodline of King David, who are ancestors of Jesus of Nazareth. God made a covenant to King David that one would be born from his royal line, that one would be born who would be King of Kings, Lord of Lords, King forever. The Savior, the Messiah, was going to be born through King David's line. We're in a study of 2 Chronicles, and we didn't look at Solomon, David's first son, a king, wise, but not Jesus. And we started looking at David's grandson, Rehoboam. And then we looked at Abijah, and then Asa, and then we spent a couple weeks looking at Jehoshaphat. And then after Jehoshaphat, things started to get messy. And we saw some hints in the Jehoshaphat story that things were going to get messy. Generally speaking, he was a good king. He loved God, but he married his son, his oldest son, to the daughter of Ahab, evil King Ahab of the north, evil Jezebel, and he married Jehoram to their daughter Athaliah. And she was evil like her mother Jezebel and like King Ahab, and she led Jehoram away from God and down the evil path. And Jehoram ends up killing his brothers, so that he's the only one of David's royal line left. And he led the nation into worshiping other gods and walking away from the God of the Bible, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and David and his father Jehoshaphat. He was king for 8 years, and then he died. Jehoram had a couple kids. Two of them we want to make sure we remember. One of them was Ahaziah. Ahaziah is going to be king next. And then he had a daughter named Jehoshabeath. And Jehoshabeath is important for today because she gets married to Jehoiada, the high priest, or at least quite possibly the high priest, an old godly man. And so that's kind of where we're setting up our story. Now, when Ahaziah was king, he was evil. He follows the way of his mother. His mother advises him to walk the evil way, his mother Athaliah. He listened to the advisors from Ahab's kingdom and from Jezebel's kingdom. He did evil. He died after 1 year. There's a fun story behind that, but we're not going to get there today. So he's killed, and then this is what his mother, Athaliah, daughter of Ahab, daughter of Jezebel, did. I'm going to remind you of this. We mentioned it a few weeks ago, but 2 Chronicles 22, verse 10, words are on the screen, that it reads like this. When Athaliah, Ahaziah's mother, saw that her son was dead, she proceeded to annihilate all the royal heirs of the house of Judah. She proceeded to annihilate all the royal heirs of the house of Judah. Now, if you've been tracking the story of the Bible thus far, this is, you get to the end of the verse, and if you didn't read to the next verse, you're going to get to this moment, and you're supposed to be stunned. This is supposed to be a devastating moment for God's people. You're supposed to be shocked. You're supposed to be thinking, evil has just won. God has made promises. God has made a covenant promise to the royal line of David. He has made a promise that the Messiah is going to come through him, and now it can't happen because all of the royal line has been killed. And so Ahab has won, evil has won, Athaliah has won, Jezebel has won. The promise to God cannot happen because his bloodline has been destroyed. Now, the next verse says something different, but put yourself back into that moment for a second, okay? At that moment, and for the next 6 years, everyone, including Athaliah, everyone believes that the royal bloodline is over, that there is no king in the line of David anymore, that David's dynasty has failed, and now that God is unable to keep that promise. I think it's worth saying that sometimes you may find yourself in a moment like this. You may find yourself in a moment where you come to believe that one of God's promises for you cannot be true. Where you come to believe, you read your Bible, you say God makes some amazing promises, and then you start to believe, well, it can't be true because of what's going on in my life, that God's promises failed. Your world, and it looks like evil has won, and there's no hope for God's promises. 6 years the nation believed this, that God's promise to David was impossible. How do you respond when you can't figure out how God's promises for you can really be true? How do you respond in that moment when it seems that evil has won in your life and that God's word can't be true, and when evil just can't be beaten in your life? My answer is intelligently researched faith. Intelligently researched faith, and by that mean I open back the book. I open up the Bible and I look for the moments like this where you look around and you understand that they don't see any way that God's word can be proven true. You see that no matter how hopeless situations may seem, no matter how dark it seems in times in the Bible, no matter how hopeless or how permanent things seem, no matter how entirely it seems that evil has won in your life, that the promises of God always stand. Somehow, unforeseen ways, that God's promises always prove themselves true, that every promise of God continues to stand throughout the pages of Scripture. And the encouragement that I see when I keep reading the book is it is the intelligent thing to do, to trust the promises of God. It's the right thing to do, having seen over and over and over again that God's promises never fail. Those who hold on to faith in those moments where they can't figure out how it's going to work out, those who hold on to faith are given a special title, a designation, might be a better word, in the book of Revelation. They're called overcomers. Those who overcome the lies, the trials, the evil, the darkness, who stand in faith and wait and trust for God's word to prove true. They're called overcomers. Now, I was at the Truth Project on Wednesday night. If this sounds like a plug, it is a plug. This is a shameless plug. The Truth Project, I've seen it before. It is fantastic. It is fantastic. It's incredible. I was blown away, and I knew it was coming. I've actually seen it several times at this point. In fact, I hid the DVDs in my flat for the last several years so I could watch it whenever I wanted to. But anyway, so I was watching the Truth Project, and there was this point in the first week where Del Tackett, who is the superb communicator who's leading us through this time, he talks about worry. And he's talking about believing the truth, believing what God says to be true, and believing in God and who God is. And he talks about worry, and specifically he pointed to the story of Jesus. And Jesus says, don't worry. Don't worry about what you're going to eat or what you drink or what you're wearing. And then he points to the lilies of the field, and Jesus points to the birds of the air. And he says, look, the birds need food, God feeds them. Look at how beautiful the lilies of the field are clothed. And the point being that Jesus is making is that you can trust the promises of God. And in that case, that God will provide what you need to do what he's called you to do. That God is the provider. He's the provider. That he will be to you what it is, that he is the one who provides. And so don't worry. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. God will provide. You can trust the promise of God. You focus on his kingdom. You focus on his righteousness. You make your life's priority the kingdom of God and God's righteousness. He will provide what you need to eat. He will provide what you need to wear. Don't worry, don't worry. The promises of God can be trusted. The promises of God can be trusted. So God promises to take care of you. You can believe it. But I can't figure out how God's going to take care of me. When I look at tomorrow, I don't know how God is going to take care of tomorrow. It's overwhelming, it's overwhelming. Friends, this is not in my notes, but I'll say this. One thing I've learned, God gives us today what we need for today. I wish he would give me what I need for tomorrow today, but he doesn't always give me what I need for tomorrow today. And when I look at tomorrow, sometimes it can feel overwhelming, but I've got to trust that the same God who got me through today can get me through tomorrow when tomorrow comes. And that tomorrow, he will give me what I need for tomorrow. So I'm not going to be afraid looking at tomorrow. I'm going to trust that the same God who provided for today will provide for tomorrow when tomorrow comes. That's free. Anyway, so he promises to take care of us. He makes promises about Jesus returning, which we're celebrating today, about being welcomed into eternity and celebrating, feasting and with the great Lamb. God's promises are true. They're proven true. That great day, that great reward will take place. Anyways, we've gotten off topic a little bit. Back to our study. So there's Athaliah here, chapter 22, verse 10. It says, when Athaliah, Ahaziah's mother, saw that her son was dead, she proceeded to annihilate all the royal heirs of the house of Judah. Oh no. Verse 11. The Bible did not end there. Jehoshabeath, the king's daughter, rescued Joash, son of Ahaziah, from the king's sons who were being killed, and put him and the one who nursed him in a bedroom. Now Jehoshabeath was the daughter of King Jehoram, and the wife of Jehoiada the priest. Since she was Ahaziah's sister, she hid Joash from Athaliah so that she did not kill him while Athaliah ruled over the land. He was hiding with them in God's temple 6 years. You know what I call this here? I call this hope unseen. Unseen hope. There is hope. They just can't see it. Their hope is there. It exists. It's out there. No one can see it. Maybe you need to know that God works this way sometimes. Sometimes you can't see reason for hope for you. Sometimes you can't see how things are going to work out. Maybe you need to know that our God is a master of unseen hope, but it being real and it being true. Maybe you need to know that there's unseen hope for you. There's unseen hope for your situation. If you can't see it, it's there. Keep trusting. Keep trusting. Anyways, little Joash, he's been hiding with the old priest Jehoiada and his wife, the princess Jehoshabeath. And then after 6 years, I'm just going to sum up the next chapter. After 6 years, Jehoiada gets the nation leaders together. He introduces, hey, by the way, here's a king in the royal line of David. He's 7 years old. We're going to make him king. They make him king. Athaliah does not like that idea. She says, treason. But no, actually, that's so backwards. It's amazing sometimes people call foul all backwards. They're the one that's fouling. I don't know, whatever the word is. And she dies. They put her to death. And that's the end of her. Okay, so that's what happens there. And in that chapter, Jehoiada reaffirms God's people. They recovenant to be God's people. They say, we are going to be the people of Yahweh. And, super fun times. Anyway, so then we get to chapter 24. And these are the words that begin chapter 24. Joash was 7 years old when he became king and reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah. She was from Beersheba, which is the furthest town in the south. Throughout the time of Jehoiada the priest, Joash did what was right in his sight, in the Lord's sight. I'm just going to read that one more time. Throughout the time of Jehoiada the priest, Joash did what was right in the Lord Yahweh's sight. Now, if you know me, that has been a Bible read-through share of mine for well over a decade. If you spend any time around you, this line always makes me sit up and pay attention. It strikes me every time. There's a concept here that I'm so familiar with personally. I don't know what to call it at this particular moment in this story, but I've seen it. I'm living it. I love this concept here. It's a great verse that keeps me humble. Jehoiada here, he serves as Joash's spiritual father, maybe, his spiritual mentor, maybe his spiritual guide, his spiritual mentor, maybe that's the word. As long as Jehoiada lives, King Joash has a heart to follow the God of the Bible, Yahweh. And what does that look like? Well, in verse 4, it says, afterward, Joash took it to his heart to renovate Yahweh's temple. We read about how this great restoration, Joash leads the nation back out of idol worship and back to the worship of Yahweh. Athaliah and King Joram, they had gotten all the stuff of the temple used for Baal worship, and they had turned people away from worshiping Yahweh. Well, he becomes the worship champion for his nation, restoring the temple and getting God's people back worshiping their God, Yahweh, the God of the Bible. It's amazing. It's amazing what he does. When you have a spiritual mentor, godly mentor, you become on the fast track to spiritual maturity, the fast track to being on the right track with your life and your priorities. Joash, his priorities, let's get the worship of God going again. Let's get God's people worshiping God, their God again. Let's get God's house renewed, restored, and provided for. Godly mentors keep our priorities on God's priorities. In fact, I did rubbish with having notes for today, as you can tell. I'm just talking away, having a good time. If you want a note to write down, here's a pithy one for you. It's not pithy at all. It's actually quite profound. Godly mentors keep our priorities on God's priorities. I know this is true. I live this. I live this. Now, I'm at that stage where I've been mentored for 20 years, 2 decades, by the same mentor. It's pretty special. It's pretty amazing. By an old pastor, long retired, he's in his 70s. I get to speak to him for an hour every other week on Wednesdays now. It's switched from Tuesdays. What's it like? Well, I talk about it enough, so you probably have an idea if you've been around long enough, but basically, sometimes we're going through a book, sometimes we're not. He gives me homework and things like that. Usually he asks me about the most important things in life. So for instance, we talked a week and a half ago, okay? This is what he asks me on the phone. These questions, they're good. Brian, when you go to church, when you go to church and you walk into the door, are you filled with love, and do you perceive the people in your church as your fellow brothers and sisters in Christ? All of them. All of them. You know, that's just such an easy question, but it's so brutal to be asked that. But since I'm here, yes, I totally do. Oh yeah, I didn't mean to cause any doubt there. Anyways, great love for all the people to view, brothers and sisters. Yeah. How would you answer that question? How would you answer that question? When you came here today, were you filled with great love and excitement, being with your brothers and sisters in Christ and these people whom you love, eager to gather with them? Eager to catch up, eager to pray for them because you love them and because you want the best for them, eager to bless them, eager to encourage and eager to be with the people of God. My mentor is always pushing me in those most important things, because if I come to church, and this was his point, and these are painful points, if I come to church, and let's say I stand up here, and let's say I teach a good message. I teach from the Bible, and there's conviction, and there's laughter, and there's tears, there's salvations, and there's fruit, and there's life change, permanent life change, and all that great stuff. But if I get up here and I do all that, and I'm working in cooperation with the Holy Spirit in this preaching process, but if I do not have love for you all, I have completely missed it. I've missed it. God uses it anyways, but I've missed it. I've missed it. So my mentor keeps pushing on those most basic buttons. If we come to church, and man, worship was powerful. Love, you know that. It was a great time of worship. And if it was great and all that, and if we feast well together and enjoy this banquet, this feast, but if we aren't here with love for one another, you've missed it, friend. You've missed it. We're celebrating. Yeah, we're worshiping. Yeah, there's Bible teaching, but it's about loving God and loving one another. We've missed it, and we've made church more of a selfish thing and lost our focus. Anyways, so do you view the people of God here as your fellow brothers and sisters full of love? Mentors, aren't they precious? Yeah. Now, none of you will ever want to mentor ever again, a spiritual mentor. Anyway, so that's just one example. That just happens to be last time we met. He's always checking in with my heart, always checking in with my soul. Is my love for God fresh, or is it fading? Is my joy overflowing, or has it just flowed away? Something robbed my joy. After 20 years, I figured this out. It's pretty simple, okay? This whole spiritual mentoring thing. As a spiritual mentor, you make sure that the love of that person is in the right place. It's to loving God first, and then it's alive and it's growing, that they've got patterns in their life that are fresh and consistent. And in my case, that I'm being a great husband and a great father, that's important, that I'm excelling at the right things. I've also figured out these last 20 years that it's the most simplest of things, the most simplest of questions that have to keep being asked. Now, I get the joy of mentoring other young guys in ministry. It's fun when I get to speak to them or Skype with them, just like my mentor does with me every other week or so for about an hour. And for them, I just get to keep asking the right questions to make sure that they keep the right things right. Loving God, joy, trusting God, not worried, not anxious, growing in prayer, believing the truths of God, refusing the lies, living with courage and fearlessness, things like that. Joash thrives, and he maintains his right priorities while Jehoiada speaks into his life. And so my questions for you are these, and they're on the screen. We're going to pretend they're notes. Who do you allow to speak into your life and give you spiritual homework? Who do you give permission to speak into your soul situation and your life priorities? Now, I understand there's many ways that we grow in Christ. We can read the scriptures. We can read biographies. We can spend time with God. Great messages online that we can live to. But let me just remind you of this very simple thing. Jesus, he preaches to crowds. There's a real ministry there. He teaches to the multitudes, but he chooses 12. He chooses 12 to be with him, and there's 3 that are even closer to him in that way. When I'm talking about spiritual mentoring, I'm talking about the New Testament concept of discipleship, making disciples. You can substitute those words across. Who are you following as they're following Jesus? Who are you imitating, in the words of Paul, as they imitate Christ? Paul has Timothy. He has Epaphroditus. He has Aristarchus. He's got Titus. He's got Luke. He's got a whole bunch of other people. I don't actually view myself like a Paul, though. I view myself more like a Timothy, someone who's being poured into, a younger man, who's being poured into, at the same time pouring in and discipling others. The kingdom of God wasn't solely meant to be built this way, like this. It's part of it, but it was designed to be about discipling, spiritual mentoring, pouring into one another in small groups of people. Encouraging one another to stay fresh with the God attributes. What are the God attributes? Things like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, like that. Who's pouring into you? Who's asking those questions? Are you pouring into people? Are people pouring into you? If you don't have very specific people in mind, then I'm just going to say it clearly, you're not on God's disciple-making agenda. You're just not. He says, go make disciples. You're just not on that agenda if that's not going on. Anyways, I say this often, and in many different ways. But I want our generation to return to this disciple-making thing, this mentoring people. And I encourage you so many times to who's in your field, who's in your professional field, who's in your field, who's younger that you can develop to fast track them so they can be godly people in your field. Anyways, it's something to think about. Now, in our story here, Joash takes a turn for the worse, and it said, I'm just going to remind you in verse 2, it said, throughout the time of Jehoiada the priest, was right in the Lord's sight, and there's some examples. But then we get down to verse 15, and we read this. It said, Jehoiada died when he was old and full of days. He was 130 years old at his death. That's old enough. He was buried in the city of David with the kings because he had done what was good in Israel with respect to God and his temple. However, after Jehoiada died, the rulers of Judah came and paid homage to the king. Then the king listened to them, and they abandoned the temple of Yahweh, the God of their ancestors, and served the Asherah poles and the idols. So there was wrath against Judah and Jerusalem for this guilt of theirs. Nevertheless, God, he sent them prophets to bring them back to Yahweh, to the Lord. They admonished them, but the people would not listen. There's a tragic slide away from God here. It's more of a running away from God, and it began when there was a change in the voices, a change. The people who were speaking in Joash's life. Jehoiada was a voice pointing him towards loving God and the worship of God and the prioritizing of God in the nation. When he died, the rulers came along and they wanted him to prioritize other things. What do the people want? The people want idolatry. Why don't you do that? And I guess that's how you know if you're listening to the right mentors. Godly mentors push you to prioritizing the things of God, your heart, your soul, your love. Earthly mentors push you to please yourself or to please the people in your life. Do what people want, they say. So Joash listens to the wrong people and he walks away from God. He abandons the worship of Yahweh and he stops listening to God's prophets, and then it gets even worse. Verse 20. The Spirit of God, it says, took control of Zechariah, son of Jehoiada, Jehoiada's son, the priest. He stood above the people and said, this is what God says. Why are you transgressing Yahweh's commands, the Lord's commands, and you do not prosper because you have abandoned Yahweh, you've abandoned the Lord, and he has abandoned you. But they conspired him and stoned him at the king's command in the courtyard of Yahweh's temple. King Joash didn't remember the kindness that Zechariah's father Jehoiada had extended to him, but killed his son while he was dying. He said, may the Lord see and demand an account. So I think I said, no, that's the right stopping point. He has his mentor's son killed. He listens to the wrong people. He has his mentor's son killed. This spiritual father who saved him from being killed, the irony there, sheltered him from Athaliah as a baby. He kills his son for speaking God's words. To me, this whole story is a great personal warning for me. And again, we started our study with the idea that these stories are written as warnings for us to become. That's from the New Testament there. And the warning for me is this. Today, Brian, you have the right voices, asking the right questions, keeping you in the right focus on the things of God. Today does not mean tomorrow. Today does not mean tomorrow. Being nearly twice my age, chances are I will outlive my mentor. At any moment, I could just stop calling him, I guess, and claim I'm too busy. But my mentor keeps challenging me on the right things, keeps pushing me to do the right things, the things that the great liar and the great deceiver try to steal away from me. Satan wants me to think my goal is to be a great leader or a great teacher. Jesus wants me to be a great lover of people, full of love and joy and peace towards God, making disciples. And I think the question I got to ask myself is, am I this arrogant to think that I'll be able to stay this alert to the enemy's agenda in my life? especially in those deep, hidden, sneaky places in my heart, without another voice, and a wiser voice asking me the right questions. So Joash's story ends with these words in verse 23. At the turn of the year, an Aramean army went to war against Joash. They entered Judah and Jerusalem, destroyed all the leaders of the people among them, and sent them all plunder to the king of Damascus. Although the Aramean had only a few men, Yahweh handed over a vast army to them because the people of Judah had abandoned Yahweh, the God of their ancestors. This is so backwards from a lot of the great stories we read earlier. Abandoned Yahweh and the God of their ancestors, so they executed judgment on Joash. When the Arameans saw that Joash had many wounds, they left him. His servants conspired against him and killed him on his bed because he had shed the blood of the sons of Jehoiada the priest, so he died. They buried him in the city of David, but they did not bury him in the tomb of the kings. It is hard to finish well in this life of faith. Your adversary, my adversary, is bombarding me with lies and wrong priorities. It is very difficult to finish well. You hear different people give you different numbers. Some people say 1 in 10. Some people say 2 in 10 of 20-somethings who are on fire for God when they're 20, staying strong and staying passionate about God. I have a hard time on Facebook these days. I don't spend a lot of time there because so many of the people that I went to Bible college with and seminary with have walked away from God. And I just, it's difficult to read the things that they post. And you know, I had so many great years with those guys. What makes me think that I'm going to be one that will finish strong? What makes you think that you're going to be one that's going to finish well? And so I ask myself and I ask us all, what are the extraordinary, unusual measures that we're taking to stay with God, to walk with God all the days of our lives so that we end fresh, that we end in love with Jesus? The liar takes people like Joash. Who is Joash? A restorer of the worship of God for his nation. He was the catalyst for restoring the worship of God in his nation. He takes people like Joash and through lies, through fading passion, through fading love, turns their hearts to other things over time, away from the God. He did that with Joash. I know the enemy would love to do that with me. I think one of the great gifts that my mentor gives me is truth. And one of the things that I've learned is that, Brian, I am not immune to this path that Joash went on. I'm not immune to this path of Joash. And neither are you. We would be foolish to think otherwise. We look at this warning and we say, you got to stay on it. You got to stay on it. You got to stay fresh. If I stop after all these years listening to those who would point me the way of God, to loving God's people, and start listening to those who would guide me down different paths, I think I would be in danger. 1 Corinthians 10 says, let him who thinks he stands firm be careful in case he falls. Heed the wisdom of this story. Heed God's wisdom from the life of Joash, this warning and encouragement. I want the best for you. I want the best for you today. I'm glad you're here. But I want the best for you all the days of your life. Growing in more and more fresh and in love with Jesus and his kingdom. And so that's why I implore you to find people to disciple you. Find people to mentor you. Find people that you will disciple. Find people that you will mentor. I sent an email to another guy who's been on my heart for a month this morning saying, hey, friend, you've been on my heart for a long time. You want to start meeting every other week on Skype and talking. It's just part of being a part of making disciples who make disciples in our fields. Encouraging one another and discipling are at the heart of our divine mandate, the Great Commission. I've got 3 challenges for us today. They're very simple. Challenge number 1, besides our wonderful Pastor Brian, who wrote that? Oh, stop. Oh, did they say brain? It's an easy mistake, friends. It's an easy mistake. It's an easy mistake. Yeah. List 5 names of people you know and who, did you get, besides me, right? You got that? Who you know and who know you, and who, there's a lot of who's there. And who you would be open to having them speak into your life and give you spiritual homework. Just brainstorm 5 people, five possible spiritual mentors. And number 2, list of 5 names of people you'd be open to speaking into their life, asking them the simple heart questions and giving them spiritual homework. It's like what I did this morning. And then number 3, start asking. Start asking. I believe this is right at the heart of New Testament Christianity. So, for those of you who fasted yesterday, it was the Day of Atonement. And I couldn't get past this one simple thought. The Day of Atonement is the day where we fast and we picture ourselves standing before God someday. And the simple thing that I just could not get past is that question, is my name in the other book? Is my name in the Lamb's book of life? Because my only hope on the day that I stand before God is not in my perfection. It's in Jesus and his salvation. Am I in Jesus' book? I know that many of you were fasting about that, but if you don't know Jesus, there is one crucial question that you need to ask yourself. Is your name in Jesus' book of life? Because someday you're going to stand before God. That's what we're remembering during this feast season. Someday you're going to have to give account for your life, and it's not going to go good. And the only hope that I have, and the only hope that Andy Ashworth has, the only hope that any of us have is our name in Jesus' book of grace, the Lamb's book of life. If you've not given your name to Jesus, it's not in that book. And I encourage you during this feast to change that and to go for prayer, to give your life to Jesus and be rescued and be